Cloud Difference webcast. Can you believe it's already Thursday? Well, I hope all of you have had a nice long weekend, and we've got a shortened work week. So we're almost there to the end of the week. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Susanna Song. I'll be moderating today's discussion. We are diving into a hugely important topic around your data, shifting your data to the cloud, becoming that data-centric organization, and ultimately knowing how to simplify storing, organizing, and accessing data to increase revenue, scalability, resilience, performance, and we can't forget, of course, security, right? It's all about maximizing your business in the most cost-effective way. So how do you achieve all of that? All of what I just said. In the next 45 minutes, we will explore, extract, and leave you with some key takeaways. A quick intro on who I am. You're probably wondering, so who is Susanna Song? Aside from facilitating today's discussion and moderating a lot of CXO events, I have a background in journalism. So for the last 20 years, I have been an interviewer, a journalist, a television reporter, a podcast host. Most recently, my last stint was with CBS News here in my hometown of Chicago. And I've pivoted in the last few years, now in the MSP, MSSP cybersecurity space. I by no means am the expert. So we've got three amazing speakers who I will bring on stage momentarily. And before we get into our topic, and before we bring these experts on, I would like to take some time to remind all of you listening, all of our attendees, to please interact with us, with the speakers. Say hello. On the right side of your screen, you'll see a whole section around chatting, questions, polls. I hope that all of you guys will take a few minutes to read through some of those poll questions and take some time to answer them because they are vitally important. My goal is to visit some of those results and incorporate them through our webcast. All righty. Without further ado, let's get started here. Our thought leading speaker today is Dr. Wendy Ng. She is the principal cloud security architect and SME over at OneWeb. She has a background in infrastructure and cloud security. She has a doctorate in medical genetics from the University of Oxford and experience both at PwC and Deloitte. She is not only a thought leader, a keynote speaker, and published consultant, but also a trained medical and data scientist. And there she is.
Hello, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christina. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we are so glad that you're joining us today. It's incredulous, in my opinion, the amount of data that organizations today are dealing with, Wendy. Data management is often overlooked or just not highly prioritized. So often, organizations like mine, we're trying to figure out where's the data, how do you access the data, how do you interpret the data, and what are the security controls around data. So my question to you as we get started is, what trends are you seeing? Enlighten us on this very huge challenge across all industries. It doesn't matter what size. You could be a startup to a large enterprise. It's still pretty somewhat daunting for organizations.
It is, absolutely. And as you sort of said in the introduction, as businesses, organizations become more competitive and we collect more information, one of the things that, especially the exec team or management is, what are we getting from the data? How are we generating insights? How are we generating revenue? How are we getting, engagement from the data? I think one of the things that for organizations, one of the main thing is because unless you're a very small organization, you probably have data floating around in different departments, different sections of the organization, and getting that initial visibility of where the data is sitting, what they are, will actually help you. So analogy that I would use would be, imagine you have a box of Lego bricks. They're just in a box, right? That's your data. When it's in a Lego box, it's a mess. It's there and you're storing it and you're sort of, you're sort of saving a space for it, but you can't generate, you can't generate that much useful stuff from it. Whereas if you sort it, you basically effectively collect your Lego bricks and you can build it into a car, you can build it into a truck, you can build it into a plane, and you can make use of it. So it's sort of that identifying where your data is, making use of it. I think that is quite critical for a lot of businesses and organizations in the sort of modern environment.
Yeah, any specific, I guess, situations that you've seen working with clients and consulting in terms of their experience and wanting to be data centric? What keeps them from taking that box of Lego and building something amazing?
I think a lot of clients, basically, it's just like, well, they have a box of Legos. Literally, you give them a box of Legos. Even if they have the box of Lego, firstly, they're probably multiple boxes of Legos in different parts of the organization. But if you give them a box of Legos, they feel slightly overwhelmed. Wow, there's all of this information. What's the most efficient way for me to store it? What's the most efficient way for me to sort it? What's the most efficient way of getting insights from it? I think just the initial kind of data sort of normalization management is probably the first step that customers and organizations have to grapple with when they enter this journey.
Okay. Well, let's bring in our two sponsor speakers. I want to thank both Datavail and MariaDB for sponsoring today's webcast. And I want to bring their thought leaders into the discussion, Wendy. So let me first introduce Pete Avon. He's the technical director at MariaDB, a dynamic, results-driven professional with 20 years of success implementing leading-edge data integration solutions. Also, Srinivasa Krishna Mamapalli, the practice leader over at Datavail. He has 16 years of experience in database architecture and administration, experience in migrating and supporting open source database technologies in the cloud. And he works closely with enterprise customers in delivering high-end database solutions across all industries, so finance, healthcare, retail, e-commerce, manufacturing, and telecommunications. So welcome.
Hey, hello.
Welcome to you both.
Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, let's continue that conversation. What Wendy said. Any particular thing that jumped out that you would like to continue?
Well, yeah, I thought that was great. The world is distributed, right? I was thinking in the 90s, you tried to get all the data in a big monolithic database and it had a big monolithic app on top. But that's not where we're at today. Like she had mentioned, in departments within these organizations, under every application is a database, and there's databases all over the place. And that's just within the organization, but that organization is also distributed across the world, right? And then you would ask the question, what's stopping folks from making use of that data, right? And we have all these silos of data and all this data movement. But the trend that we're seeing is people want to get away from managing the database. What happens is with these databases, as they grow, the complexity grows, and a lot of effort goes into the care and feeding of the database. And when people are focused there, and that's not why you've hired the folks you've hired, the developers and the analysts, you've hired them to make information products and to build reports and make use of that data. But they can't because everyone's managing the database. And so we see this trend of, hey, I want to, if I could have someone else, if I could put this in the cloud. So in the cloud, in a database as a service, I don't have to worry about high availability or scalability or OS patching or updates, right? I can just use it as a service. Once it's in the cloud, I still need a DBA though. I still need someone, right, for the user management and for the care and feeding of the database. But they're willing to, invest in that too. They're like, hey, I want proactive monitoring. I want security audits. I want deep troubleshooting, and query optimization. I want someone to handle that for me too, because I really just want to be able to focus on the data and not on the database itself, right? Do you want to add anything to that, Srini?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, glad to be here. Thank you, Susanna, Wendy, and Pete. Obviously, right on. Right. I mean, there is tremendous amount of data that's coming in from different solutions the customers use. Right. And many organizations have this challenges to how to manage their data. Right. How to properly take care of your database. And obviously, cloud provides that availability needs and scalability opportunities. Right. You can within real time, depending on your business case and demands. You can scale up, scale down, and geographically you can expand that. So certainly cloud provides that flexibility and opportunity to expand. At the same time, right, you need to ensure you have the data, and that data provides some reliable stats, and you can make use of the data so that you can make business decisions based on the data that's coming out of it. So many organizations, again large enterprises, they may have a leveraged already hybrid cloud or even multi-cloud opportunities. But when you think of small to medium companies, right, they still have probably potentially start with a single cloud provider and start there from to begin their cloud journey or cloud adoption.
Yeah. So, what compelling factors and challenges do you believe drive an organization's cloud and data journeys toward modernization?
Well, yeah. So a lot of these systems, these large organizations have been in place for a very long time. It's wild. I mean, I started my career as a software engineer at Sun Microsystems back in the day, right? But I won't go into organizations. They're using a lot of the same software we used back then. So part of this is like, hey, we have a chance to modernize, digital transformation, modernization. It's not just, hey, if I lift and shift, I can take it and put it in the cloud and get some benefits. But really, I've got this same monstrosity. So I want to refactor, right? And so in this distributed world, right? There's opportunities for simplification of the architecture and simplification of the environment and reductions in data movement. Which basically when I do this, I have some ability to govern my data better, right? And have a better understanding of where it is. And when I simplify, I can a couple of examples, right? You might have in financial services. I'm working with a customer where they're moving from an IBM mainframe to our distributed SQL solution, right? Because they want to modernize and they want to be able to have the scalability of a distributed transactional LTP system and be competitive. But there's other benefits to that. I can talk a lot about that, but I'll back off of that. But or I'll come back to that. Then you have another financial software company we're working with where they have 17 applications, and it's like, hey, we could actually consolidate those applications into a single distributed SQL instance in the cloud. And really simplify our infrastructure a lot, right? And our data management, so we can focus more on the applications and more information products and less on the database. Generally what I see what motivates it is pain, right? Yeah. With a database, so I'll just give a little background on MariaDB, and the SkySQL is our database as a service, but it's really 3 purpose-built engines. Databases are typically run the business, your transactional systems, which we're really concerned about this quarter's data, and there's lots of reads, lots of writes, lots of concurrent users, and I can't lose any data, right? Because I'm running my business on the system. And then you have observe the business systems. Observe the business systems are like your data warehouses, your data lakes. I've got data from years back archived, not just this quarter's data. And I'm going to do some analysis to understand, where my business has been, but also hopefully predict where my business is going so I can plan better. But I'm going to be bringing data from all sorts of sources, and this database is going to be much larger. It's going to have batch loading. It's going to have fewer concurrent users. It has a different profile, so you need a different purpose-built engine for that. So I mentioned this because SkySQL, we provide this run the business, OLTP, our enterprise server as a service. We provide a column store, an analytical engine, which is the data warehouse as a service, and then expand, which is our distributed SQL solution. And distributed SQL, is because a lot of the pain I deal with is people in a traditional relational system. The way you scale the system to start is you add more hardware to the database because it's their scale up. Scale up means I'm just going to keep adding more hardware. But somewhere you meet the threshold of what's reasonable for hardware, and then you start doing something called sharding, where I'm going to basically take my database tables and my schema and start splitting it and partitioning it across nodes. But the system doesn't do this for you, right? Developers, DBAs, people have to put a lot of effort into this sharding, and it has to be managed by application logic to maintain the integrity of the data. But it can become very brittle, very complex, this is where people start running into a lot of pain, right? You start running, there's a lot of, things go down, maintaining these things, backups becomes very hard. And so what you saw in the last decade was sort of the rise of NoSQL, right? Because NoSQL allowed systems to scale out. You could get this, you could now massively scale your system, get the performance, but you had to sacrifice SQL. And you might have to sacrifice ACID transactions. But people were willing to do this because of the pain of scaling up a relational system, right? Well, now you don't have to do that, because with distributed SQL is just that. It's a scale out relational system. You can add nodes as you need capacity, remove nodes as you don't need the capacity. So you use only what you need as you need it, but you don't sacrifice any of the ACID transactions, enterprise capabilities. And my last thing, on this is one of the benefits for application development is, of course, all three of these engines we provide all share a common MariaDB interface. So if they all share a common SQL syntax, and you can use any of the MySQL or MariaDB ecosystem of tools. Something else that reduces friction in working with data, because generally what you see, if you had those three different databases in an organization, they're going to be three different databases with three different dialects, three different skill sets, three different ecosystems of tools, right? So generally, that was a long explanation, but what we see generally is pain, and the pain is usually associated with, hey, for the OLTP and the data warehouse situation, we're putting a lot of effort into these databases, and we don't want to deal with this anymore. We want to just be able to focus on the data. For expand, we really see a lot of, hey, we're doing a lot of sharding, we're doing a lot of data movement, we're losing data. There's a different kind of pain because we can't get the scale that we need to be able to service our customer base. And so expand manages removes a whole tremendous amount of complexity when you're running into that scale up, you're hitting the wall scenario.
I'd just like to sort of jump in on sort of Pete's, the sort of pain threshold. I think at certain point, organizations, there's refresh cycles, and there's, especially if you're sort of a small, medium organization, you have your business requirements, you have your business goals. You may not have the ability to sort of invest in, a bunch of a team that sort of manages your database system. Just that pain of, developers want to, push out new applications, and you want to help them as much as you can. Execs want to look at the data and have access to data, and ideally have a single pane of glass so they can look at what databases they have and where they're sitting. So I think that sort of ease of access for them to sort of basically conduct their business needs without having to sort of, literally go into the pipes and the plumbing of, running a database, operating a database. And of course, the public cloud brings an additional sort of layer of flexibility and availability to systems. So, you no longer need to go out and say, I'll order I'll order a server, and you have this protracted, especially for, reasonably sized organization, protracted procurement cycle. By the time you sort of get the equipment, someone else might have used the same set of data and sort of had that business advantage. And that, I think, is quite crucial in the modern environment, the speed of information access and how quickly you can turn that into some insights or data that will assist your organization going forward.
Sure. Yeah, I think to Wendy's point, right? Absolutely, right. Now organizations are obviously they're focused on innovation, right? And business is mainly focused on stability and the end user satisfaction, right? So now it's more appealing because with cloud, you're getting all the infrastructure and everything, and now many organizations may have already started their cloud journey, starting from migrations and doing the lift and shift initial phase. But the real beauty of the cloud would unfold once you get into the next level of platform as a service, or modernize your infrastructure and application databases tier, so you can get that the real benefits out of it, and it can shift your capital expenditure costs into more towards the operational cost, and with the coming in improved productivity levels, and you get the reliability settings, you get the same consistent performance, and your availability and scalability needs keeps changing, and you can certainly expand to that as your business needs evolves and your business requirement gets changed.
Thank you for that. I do want to walk us through the first poll question because it had to do with modernization. We've got a number of you here listening, and thank you so much for participating. The first question was, where are you in your database modernization journey? Remaining on our current platforms, got 33%. That was the highest. So, status quo, stay on their current platforms. 25%, rate number 2, will build new applications on new platforms and keep legacy applications on old platforms. Okay, so juggling 2. 19% said evaluating and planning to migrate to new database platforms. 13% in the process of migrating. And 6% said will consider. Pete, does that surprise you?
Well, yeah. And the only thing that stuck out was the leaving the legacy systems where they are, because what does that mean today? On-prem actually means the cloud today. So I'm working with a client that has 200 systems. They want to leave as is, but they want to leave them as is, as in when you migrate to the cloud, for one of these databases, the first thing you do is a compatibility test, right? Will my application, and if I can run it as is, I can just move my data to the cloud to the database as a service. And now, great, now you can take care of that for me. Because again, I've got these 200 databases. They're doing important things in my business, but they're just a pain. I don't want people to deal with them. I want to be able to focus on the outputs of those databases or leave those systems, but I want people innovating and doing other things that are more important to the business that have higher priority at this time, right? So leaving where they are doesn't necessarily mean leaving them, in that data center. Again, I don't know, one of the reasons people move to the cloud, of course, is the economies of scale. And, when you have a data center, you've got power, real estate, all those sorts of investments you have to pay for, of course, right? I'm not sure anyone's doing that anymore. Now it's like, hey, if I can offload that to the cloud on some existing service with minimal changes to my application, I want to take advantage of that, right? And so that's the one point that stuck out to me.
And I think I agree with sort of from past experiences of dealing with customers. I think the pain threshold that Pete talked about earlier is why they're running 2 systems. Well, it's the pain of migrating it, and a lot of that is actually expertise. Because if you're trying to migrate data, many other organizations are really trying to do the same. And so you're basically competing in an environment for the same type of skill sets. So it's getting that talent and getting that expertise through the door is actually quite difficult, because so many organizations trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, so this segues to my next question. Christian, maybe you could take this. So what key trends do you see in database as a service and cloud market among customers? Because maybe that pain and maybe that hesitation is just not knowing how to migrate, right? And needing help, not having the expertise, the skill gap.
Absolutely. Again, we work in the services industry, so we are obviously the managed service provider. So a lot of customers that we see on our end is hey, they have legacy systems, obviously, and they need to modernize their environment to cloud native, and cloud provides that best platform. So because you have services, you have tools, you have database systems and applications and software as a service, everything available there, and you just have to build, and it provides that great flexibility for organizations to get started and going without lots of investment. And of course you still need to do that active development, and sometimes it could be challenging, right? Having the right talent, right, and people who have been through that process earlier might be able to guide you with the best possible solutions, roadblocks, with all the preparations and everything needed. And rather, you could still have your in-house team spend time on focusing on development cycles and let the experts handle the migration opportunities and modernization opportunities, whether it's application or database or even everything surrounded it.
Yeah, we jumped to the third question. It says, what barriers exist to implement cloud data modernization? And if you take a look at the results, a whopping 60% in budget and cost constraints, and then 13% lack of understanding of the technology, 13% is absence of clarity on the metrics, 13% lack of roadmap. So Pete, that budget cost constraint, that was more than half of the votes went to the budget, right? It's costly.
Is this a poll that we just did just now?
Yeah. So
wow.
we've got some active participants. Thank you very much.
Oh, excellent. Well, yeah, interesting. So, one of the things we run into is, sort of like what is the, you have to do some math, right? To prove out the business value of these things, right? So it's one thing to just talk about, hey, let's move it here and it's better, right? But when I was talking about pain, there's usually that pain is a cost, and that cost is in the amount of salaries, the amount of resources, right? There's a dollar associated with the money I'm spending on so many salaries per week to I'm working with a company right now. It's a mobile gaming company, right? The mobile gaming company, they have game developers, and those game developers aren't developing games. I'm paying all these really talented, expensive developers develop games, and they're spending all their time with the database, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, it's like they would like to be able to just ignore the database problem, so it's a good database service, because they'll be able to generate more revenue by having their guys make more games. That's why these guys were hired, right? So for them, that was an easy equation, right? There's going to be some sort of investment, but it's worth the investment for the return that they're going to get from, now my guys, I'm paying them to do something, and we'll have these new opportunities for revenue from these different games, right? But it's similar in the financial services industry, or in healthcare, or in global media, right? I'm paying some people. I've got some investment of resources. Yes, there's this other service, but you're not comparing, database is a service versus this database. That's not the only cost you got to look at, right? There's a whole ecosystem of cost, and hey, where my people are working, and if we invest in this service, and it's being managed for us, what is the opportunities is that going to open up for us? What money are we going to save? Where are we going to shift our investment now towards that development that we should be doing, and how will that manifest in the benefits for us, right?
Yeah, and Pete, it also, how does that change the role, right, of the IT, the lines of business, database administrator, and IT staff, when you've got database as service, when you're able to go to an MSP to help you? Krishna, like, how, as you work directly with these clients, how does that impact the roles of the other current employees and their
Absolutely roles? Right. I mean, the trend that we see and the kind of issues that customers come to us is obviously managing the databases and retaining the staff, right? People focused on doing the active development rather than doing the management of their infrastructure and databases, whereas having engaging MSPs like us would certainly help them, right? So that you can have your people still focused on you doing the active development, but at the same time cloud kind of transforms the role of any database application, or even the database administrations. It kind of transforms into the next level. You, instead of doing the reactive stuff, you are no more focused on the architectural stuff, more strategic items, right? How do I modernize my application? How do I modernize my data sets? Are there any legacy systems that I can probably potentially convert or migrate into open source solutions? There are lots of choices available, as Pete mentioned, right? There are transactional, hybrid models, and even analytics models that you can bring on to what's the right solution for my right database specific needs here. At the same time, we also have like a fractional DBA support, that model that we normally engage with our customers. You don't really need to invest in hiring a full-time DBA. You can rather get that same level of support and experience and expertise, assurance to ensure that you have people covering and supporting your database around the clock 24/7 with just fractional of the cost that you're going to spend there.
Yeah. And Dr. Wayne, you said you had some more color to add around the cost, the budget.
So I think everything, especially in modern organization, every dollar, cents, pounds, pence, it's scrutinized, and I think it's often difficult to get large capex investment in terms of from the funding side of it. So one of the sort of advantages of as a service offerings, whether it's database or public cloud, is that the costs become OpEx. And it becomes sort of like the initial outlays layer. And from the board and from the executive point of view, it's actually easier to get that type of funding as opposed to sort of, we need to invest X million on this and X million on that. So it's just the sort of change from CapEx to OpEx makes it, you know, in an environment where funding is difficult, it just makes things slightly easier if you're trying to go to the board and get funding for your programs.
Yeah, and I can probably add a point to that. So obviously, you know, when we talk about, you know, funding options and other things, sometimes, you know, working with a partner who are experienced and, you know, getting those additional funding, it kind of opens up those opportunities, especially where, you know, organizations looking for that initial help to get those additional funding and financial requirements.
And just to follow on from that, I think just from someone who's sort of been in the trenches, you know, I've been sort of in engineering and architecture. There's a world of difference between sort of actually having practical experience of implementing and running something as opposed to, you know, there's a ton of technical information out there, but that you know, that difference is really night and day. And having somebody who's got that type of experience behind you really would help help the organization and certainly help your business to achieve the goals that it needs to.
Yeah, we have a couple questions that have come in from the audience. One person's asking, you know, what about the hybrid cloud, allowing organizations to stay on legacy systems while implementing new applications on cloud or as a service to slowly migrate their processes?
I can jump in. So in terms of, I think if you're a fairly large organization, so different people have different preferences, and that's just, you know, that's just how it works with people. You know, we work with technology, but we ultimately, you know, we work with people. So if you're, you know, in most sort of reasonably sized organizations, there's probably a mixed technical environment. You know, some people, you know, prefers one provider, some people prefers another, and you know, you can work with that, right? Because the most expensive and the most important asset you have is that person with the expertise who's able to leverage that information. So I think increasingly more organizations are sort of running in a sort of mixed tech environment, and for some of the regulatory environments, right, you can't, you know, they just wouldn't allow you to put everything on public cloud because you can't necessarily state exactly where the asset's going to sit, and that sort of comes with, you know, well, if the regulator says no, then you're out of business. So you know, oftentimes organizations will have that kind of mixed environment that they have to be able to sort of handle and run with during normal operations.
Yeah, I can probably add to that similar, right? I mean, obviously, you know, when you think about, you know, hybrid cloud models or even multi-cloud models, right? It's good to, you know, understand, you know, what are we trying to achieve here, right? What are the organization's goals? And, you know, it's best to work with a partner or even a cloud provider that kind of, you know, matches with your, you know, thought process and have the same level of understanding on the approaches, right? At the same time, as we kind of did several what called trends analysis surveys, and we kind of have several interesting factors that most enterprise organizations are either already approached, you know, multi-cloud or even hybrid cloud, because they want to ensure, you know, they have the legacy systems still continue to leverage those on-prem operational structure. At the same time, any new investment or any new development they plan, they're going to be pretty much heavily focused on the cloud there. And one more point before I can hand it off to Pete is, you know, it is crucial to, when you think of cloud, right, it's crucial to ensure you involve all the stakeholders. Sometimes, you know, most organizations would involve just the business leaders and the IT team, but not the actual, you know, application vendors and who are responsible for the functional piece of it. So it's crucial to, you know, have those discussions, you know, have kind of a whiteboarding sessions, and also plan for the exit. You know, so most of the customers, organizations, they only plan for the cloud entry migrations, but they need to also look for, you know, cloud exit point, or even look for cloud migration opportunities from, you know, single provider to multiple providers. So.
Yeah, I was going to say, none of this stuff's like flipping a switch, right? I think we're in a period of transformation, right? And it's sort of it's happening over time. So hybrid is going to be the way for a while. It's not like, oh, I've just got everything, I'm moving everything to the cloud. These large organizations, there's just too many systems. That's never going to happen. So there's going to be things that are on-prem, but like I said, on-prem that might shift to, AWS, some, or GCP, some other cloud. But for some compatibility, but just running in an as-is mode, right? But the real transformation, right? I'm embracing the cloud and the database as a service of the new technologies. I might be doing some digital transformation, some modernization. But this ties into everything, because with that comes change management. You're right. Everyone wants things to change, and then, oh, whoa, we're changing. Now we roles and responsibilities, and how do we collaborate, IT and dev? How do we work together in this new environment, right? So there's a lot to it, but I don't think things are just going to stay. It's the cloud. Anyway, computing is becoming a utility, right? And so I don't think any organization is going to, stay if they have to. But like Wendy noticed, that's what we see too. Is we work with folks who want to move to the cloud, but they can't. In heavily regulated environments, banking or healthcare, or even like what's interesting is online gambling in some states. Right? They won't allow you to, leverage the cloud or database as a service. They want some things to run where they run.
Another question is, have you done any large-scale implementations in banking successfully integrating with legacy systems?
I could probably take on that. So I would say yes. In the recent past, what I'm seeing is, at least from our customers that we're approaching, is most of the financial tech and financial services organizations are interested to leverage that cloud as their option for strategies and planning discussions. Yes, there's certainly a modernization aspect that we come to along with the planning session. There is, what kind of application are we looking at? What kind of regulations and compliance requirements are we looking at? Certainly has certain cloud provides those built-in features, functionalities, and the tooling. It all depends on how are we tying those things together to make sure we get through those processes, and what are the requirements, and what are our short-term to long-term strategy goals to achieve that. So, of course, there is a critical piece of the application and database layer in there, but when we think about cloud strategy and application modernization strategy, we certainly need to have that discussion and dialogue for the specific needs.
Yeah, when I heard the question, so MariaDB, this thing is we have 3 databases, so I have to go through a decision tree in my head of different use cases. And so one came to mind was like an investment firm, and their large scale implementation is moving off that IBM mainframe to a distributed SQL expand instance, right? And so this is the thing is you don't sacrifice security or encryption or or anything you would with an enterprise database with expand, right? So they're putting their financial instruments into this system. I know the specifics of PII, I'd have to look into that. But another one that came to mind was DBS Bank. I think I'm allowed to say names here. The largest bank in Singapore, but they replaced all their MariaDB with replaced all their Oracle with MariaDB, because MariaDB has an
Oracle. Sounds better.
An Oracle compatibility mode. Yes, I had that backwards.
Yes.
That's some of the pain too. We do see a lot of folks who want to get off of Oracle. There's a lot of pain associated with Oracle, and so that's another reason we see people come to MariaDB, and because of this compatibility. But they replaced all their financial applications with MariaDB, right? And so for the definition of large, single instance or multiple instances, right? But these banking institutions, they're running their businesses on MariaDB. And so I can look into the details of that, but I'm sure the security, when we go into these environments, before you even get to test, you have to fill out a freaking 20-page document of security requirements, right? And you get audited before you even, install the software. So.
Yeah, I could probably add one more point to that, because since Pete mentioned about migration from Oracle, right? So we do have lots of customers showing interest and reaching out to us in helping with their decision making and migrating from commercial to open source databases. And we have done quite a bit of migrations and saving them thousands and thousands of dollars on the commercial licensing, but you could still get the same level of functionality and requirements and specifications when you get in terms of open source solutions, right? So.
Yeah, we another question we that came in. So they're asking for advice for getting modernization projects complete, funded, and working aligned strategically with both IT and LOB, line of business. So how can you keep projects moving forward by that alignment, through that alignment?
My experience is to start small, right? Start with something that's don't start with the biggest pain. Find the pain with what's the low hanging fruit, and because again, it's like the behaviors. You can't on top of the systems, you can't just change the systems. On top of the technical systems are systems of people, and those have to change as well. And so it's like, hey, if you can start with a smaller project, right? This is what I've seen where, hey, it's going to take some effort. We can collaborate and bring this to fruition. But now we're going to. There's always a number. We're always trying to make the number larger or smaller, right? We want to get there faster, or we want to make more. Find whatever your metric is for success, and then make that your goal and make that your first project, right? And then leverage that. Then you've got to work that muscle, right? Now that you've got that success with that project, you can now take on it's like going to the gym. I can lift more weight. I can do a more heavyweight project, right? But if you're just getting started, because there are a lot of moving parts, and organizations can be just as complex as the systems underneath them, we find the quickest way to success is to start small, right? And get the ball rolling that way, and then capitalize on that success to grow it into other systems.
And I just want to, oh, please.
Sorry. Yeah. I think I certainly agree with Pete on that, right? Identifying the risk factor, right? Which are the most least impactful applications that you want to target for, and obviously doing proof of concepts, making sure you have the right folks in place, you have the right processes or procedures in place, and you test them, make sure everything works fine as you expect, and then obviously we call it phased approach or waves approach depending on how you take it. So it's always good to start low, and as you get better, as you get mature in your process and proficiencies, and getting things documented and repetitively, make sure you get the right solution in place.
I just want you to sorry, just last comment, just to follow on Krishna and Pete. I think it's crucially important when you're trying to do this transformation to actually bring everybody with you, and that means that you need to go down there and explain the rationale and sort of listen to the folks on the ground, the people who are sort of at the forefront of the business, and sort of listen to their concerns and deal with them. I think if you having those people, bringing those people with you, gives you also lots of visibility on your current environment, which will massively help your transformation initiative, as well as helping it moving along.
Well, I would say start with an assessment, right? We're having the right folks, having that open dialogue. Make sure what are we trying to achieve here, getting those things documented. Start with an assessment. What are the bits and pieces are we learning, and that's a good start, so that you understand the gaps and what are we trying to achieve, and as part of the approach.
Yeah, we had 33% saying they're remaining on their current platforms. What are some signs that an organization really needs to start that conversation toward modernization? And there are people on this call who may not feel like they're ready, or they may need that they need to.
So I think so. I'll jump in for that one. I think one of the things with with legacy system is running it, the community of people who's going to be on those becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So those systems won't be supported, and those folks who have the expertise retire. So you just end up with this monstrosity that nobody knows how to run, nobody knows how to operate. So you want to, I think, you want to try and sort of jump before that happens. I think once you sort of start to find out you're paying big bucks for expertise, and you're not getting any kind of update, security or patching or otherwise, I think that is a good sign for you to sort of really start moving. But it's difficult because you're in a live business environment where you're serving customers. What Pete said about that pain point, it needs to get above a certain threshold before people go, okay, let's move.
Yeah, I would probably say, to add to in this point, right? Obviously, many organizations have lots of application portfolios, right? Start there, right? What are the things that you think you want to retain, right? And there could be some opportunities where you want to probably rehost and replatform, and even some things there, as you mentioned, right? Legacy infrastructure and modernization opportunities, moving from monolithic into microservices architecture. Are there any opportunities to redesign or refactor some of the considerations to be? And if so, can we leverage the cloud as a solution for some of those refactorings that needs to be done? So, yeah, certainly lots of discussions needs to be done.
Yeah, and organizations like companies are reinventing every day, taking advantage of these technologies. So well, one thing is organizations have a high threshold for pain. That's what came to mind. So the pain has to get pretty great sometimes, but then it becomes, hey, what's the cost? Wendy and Krishna had great answers there, but it's also like, what about competition, right? Because essentially like, hey, I'm leaving these things as is, but someone else is going to embrace the newer technology and they're going to get there faster and be able to deliver the same product at less cost, right? And what is that going to mean for my business? Right. So it depends. There's a lot of different contributing factors, but you don't want to just sleep on those systems and be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to leave them as is. Right. It requires putting some thought around, okay, well, how important is this to my business? And where do I see this in the future? Is this something that's like over time is going to deprecate, or is this, hey, is this critical? Is this something that we want to nurture because we know that we're going to need this going forward to succeed?
Right? They're ready for experimentation, or even ready to explore and learn new stuff.
So I just want to just follow on from Pete's comment about looking at what other organizations are doing, especially in the financial services. So I find that the exec they all speak to each other, they all know each other. Certainly from the technology side of it, one of the easiest way, or one of the sort of less painful way for them to do it, is some other organization is doing it. So some organization is trying to is moving or going to migrate off a legacy system, they'll be like, oh no, we must do it too. So I think getting that kind of exposure across organizations is going to help you with sort of lowering your sort of pain threshold.
Yeah, you got to keep up with your competitors for sure. Well, we have run out of time, and I know there are a few questions that were submitted at the very end, and we will make sure to email you sometime this week, get those questions answered. I wanted to leave with two final thoughts. 44% of you said the number one barrier that's standing in the way of using data in your organization is integration, right? Integrating the multiple data sources. And then you guys do know that there is an immense benefit to cloud data modernization. And the number one thing you guys said, 59% of you said, was the data availability for any app and business. So thank you so much to our speakers, Dr. Wendy Ng, Pete Avin, and Krishna. Thank you so much, Datavail and Maria DB, for sponsoring today's event. We will make sure to be reaching out to all of you guys who attended. And I hope everyone else has a wonderful day. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Susanna. Thanks, all.
Bye.